Hello everyone, it is Leon here, and I am with
Phil, hello.
Who has been reviewing Rain, and you've given it...
It's a 7.
The 7.
It's 7 out of 10.
The trailers made it look quite lovely. When I was putting together this video, I was sort of a bit... trying to find things that looked a bit different. Visually, it seems... Is it like this all the time?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's one of the problems with it. It's not a huge problem, but... I mean, there's just the kind of the danger of setting your game in a rainy abandoned city is that eventually it gets a little bit fatiguing to be in that rainy abandoned city.
So the setup is that you are... What is it? You're invisible, only visible in the rain.
Yeah, it's the raindrops that kind of give you that semi-transparent sheen, so you look like a ghost, but otherwise you're invisible. So if you go somewhere where you're in the cover,
here, aren't we? I think he's about to not be seen because he's out of the rain.
Yeah. So that's it, and then you can sort of track where you are on screen by knocking things over and looking at your little footprints. And we saw the main enemy there, this bony thing called the Unknown, who crops up through the entire game and gives chase.
Oh, so it's one sort of, it's like a Resi Nemesis style.
Yeah,
keeps coming back.
Yeah, there are smaller enemies as well. There are some sort of bone dogs and some little bone weevil things, but he's really the one that gives you these chases, and it's good. There's a girl as well that you start off just by trying to follow the girl and make sense of the world that you're in, and then the boy and the girl are chased by the guy who's got a really unpleasant long finger that he uses to sort of point at wherever he's looking.
Lovely. So is there any kind of setup to it, or you just sort of dropped into this thing and left to make what you can of it, or does it kind of really explain what's going on?
Oh, there's not a ton of exposition. There's a kind of a really nice watercolor intro cutscene, but it doesn't really set up much more than it's like a poem. I mean, it's really vague. I'm not really sure why you're invisible. I think maybe it's something to do with the two kids both being ill.
So the game just starts and you're this invisible kid in the rain. There's no. You don't know why you're there. Or...
No. There's no really explicit description about what's going on and where everyone else is and who these bony things are.
Okay. So the central mechanic then is that you're invisible out of the rain, and you can see like footprints obviously here, and you use that to sneak past monsters.
Yeah, that's it. And this is kind of the big problem with it, is that this is its one trick. And once you've kind of done this, there are only so many ways you can contrive an area that has a monster, some shade, and a jump puzzle.
Yeah.
And that's really all it's got apart from those chases. So, I mean, I guess it's about a 3 or 4 hour experience, and for a downloadable, that's absolutely fine. But I just found it lacking a little bit in either one extra mechanic or inventive ways to put, the invisible mechanic too. So,
is there much in the way of puzzling, or is it just sort of finding ways past kind of enemies?
Well, the boy and the girl sort of interact with each other quite nicely. So you will sort of push a box out of the way for her, and then she'll, provide you. You'll be able to sort of like jump up somewhere by vaulting over her and things like that. And
she's AI. It's not like a...
No, yeah, she's completely AI. But it's you've kind of done the whole press X to vault before by this point, so it does grow a little bit tedious, and everything moves quite slowly. It is very Resi sort of 2 and 3, and that the camera angles are set in a certain way, and like a box takes about 5 seconds to inch along, and everything's just, and you start to sort of, when you get to a new area, you start to think, oh god, this is going to take ages just to get to that ladder over there.
It's quite a lot of you mentioned the cameras. It's quite sort of cinematic in its cuts. Is it sort of disorientating at all? I found it quite... When I was going through the footage, I was a little unsure of whether it was a playable bit or not, just because the viewpoint was cutting quite drastically.
I didn't have too many problems with it. There were a couple of fairly awkward angles, but I mean, during those chase sequences, you really have to keep moving and jumping and climbing over things constantly, and I didn't have too many instances where I felt like the camera let me down. Having said that, you die so quickly and easily and brutally. It's almost the highlight, because those things just don't mess around. They just swipe you down, and then you're just a dead child in the rain, and it's just unbearable.
I saw the children were swallowed by the darkness is the message that comes up. It's pretty bleak.
It's pretty hard going. It's not necessarily a game for kids, even though it's about kids.
We've seen so there's a muddy puddle thing here, isn't there, where so if you go through a muddy puddle, you stay visible.
Yeah, they can see your footprints, and and you can use that to sort of distract them. Because if you then fall into a clean puddle, then your footprints, disappear. So they just drawn to the muddy footprints.
So, I mean, does it do much else like that, or is it just this sort of? I mean, we see these.
This is another one, yeah. So this is kind of like mobile cover, and I think this is only used in this one instance. You never see these things again. So it's like they introduce this new mechanic, and then okay, you've done.
Okay.
There you go, you're gone. Yeah, there are a lot of ideas. Well, half ideas in here, but they don't quite gel together. Like you would have expected by the end of the game that all of these would be sort of like clockwork. You'd have to move in this movable shade and then use the muddy footprint thing to distract somebody, but it doesn't really. It's really quite set in just this in being a jump puzzle based game.
So when you say jump puzzle, I mean, so you're basically just trying to get from one point to another?
Yeah, that's basically it. So whether that involves opening a door or shimmying along a crate so that you can jump higher or something like that. Having said that, it's presented really, really nicely. There's this really soothing piano soundtrack, and the story, such as it is, I mean, it's very vague, but it is quite engrossing for a 3 or 4 hour period, because there is so much mystery the whole way through about what this world is. It's kind of, I guess, you saw Paris, but Paris lacking any sort of people, and there's a really nice section in the circus in which you have to sort of distract the unknown, the main enemy, by winding up a gramophone, and then he's drawn to that noise, and then you sneak past him and things.
Okay, so I mean, there are kind of puzzles of a sort, but you're not picking up keys. It's like environmental kind of stuff.
There are a couple of keys in there as well, but they're not used too often. I think there's only maybe 2 or 3. Find the key and run along and unlock something.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, mostly. I mean, actually, about I guess there are 9 chapters, maybe 10. After the 6th chapter, the world. I mean, spoilers, so watch out. But the world sort of changes to the extent where you're not really even puzzling anymore. You're just kind of running around and jumping. The pace really quickens, and then it's not about finding keys or distracting people. It's just running and jumping.
Okay,
it's a strange kind of pace.
So it's an interesting kind of idea, a nice sort of small game, but maybe not quite on the same level as things like the Unfinished Swan or Journey, even, or any of those kind of uniquely interesting kind of PSN games.
We're not talking Journey. I mean, it doesn't really have the presentation in you to spec the budget that Journey had.
Yeah. But also the gameplay. I mean, it sounds like it's struggling. It's had an idea and then struggled to really use it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think the same might be true of the Unfinished Swan, in that it has that one mechanic. I mean, the Unfinished Swan, I guess, did a couple of different things with it. Rain tries to, but I'm not sure what else you can do with this central mechanic, and sometimes it is a little bit disorienting to not be visible on it. It's such against your gamer instincts to not be visible on the screen. So there are only so many things you can do with that.
Because we saw, like earlier, there was a few footprints and some papers being kicked around. I mean, so there's not a strong sort of visual cue as to where you are on the screen. You literally just aren't on the screen.
Yeah, you're not on the screen. You just have to watch your own footprints and things. So yeah, when you're being chased, it's quite the challenge, and it's actually quite a tough game as well. I would have expected, a fairly artsy downloadable to basically just give you a free pass and let you explore its environments and things. But yeah,
is that tough because it's hard in a Dark Souls way, or hard because you can't see yourself when you're invisible kind of a way?
Yeah, I mean, actually, this was a nightmare. This one, so you're distracting the unknown with this organ. I didn't realise for ages that I had to go the other way out of that particular room. So it's hard in that way, and that there's a lot of trial and error involved in figuring out that you have to time certain things perfectly, and that you have to go a certain place, and then if you don't do that within this 3-second window, then you're basically doomed to being swiped by that unknown, and then the children are swallowed by the darkness. And
there's a lot of kind of text coming up on the screen. It feels like the game's trying to tell you what to do all the time.
Well, it is and it isn't, in the same way that the story, there are a good few cutscenes, but you very rarely get an idea of what's actually going on. That's not necessarily for the worse. The game is trying to help you, but it also doesn't want to give away its puzzles. So there are hints that come up. They don't often tell you exactly what to do. Okay,
so 7 out of 10. It's a sort of an interesting idea that maybe doesn't quite fulfill its kind of potential.
If you're hooked in by the look of it and the Debussy soundtrack, then go for it. Otherwise, it's maybe a little bit thin on the ground for ideas.
Okay, thank you very much.